Okay, how many of you have, when you were born again, you could really sense that there was something that happened? Maybe you couldn't put your finger on it, but you knew that your life had changed. How many did that happen to? Okay. Then how about, have you grown in your faith and you see change in your life because of growing progressively in your faith? Have you seen that happen? Okay. Sometimes it's radical and you can see real change, and then it happens progressively in time. I want you to go to the beginning of the Bible in Genesis chapter 3 and take note of some simple principles regarding man and woman in the Garden of Eden. There's a little diagram, not a very good looking one, but it's okay. These are trees. One is a tree of life, and the other one is a tree of knowledge of good and evil. You have Adam and Eve, and some observations of their lives when they were in the garden. There was physical life. Two people were one. They had responsibility. What was their responsibility in the Garden of Eden? To tend the garden, keep it, name the animals, multiply. They were husband and wife. They were to multiply and fill the earth with their kind, with their seed, human beings. That's pretty amazing. So they were responsible, and they also had free choice. Also, we see that Satan came into the garden, and we also know that God walked in the garden. When we think about man and understand him and the responsibility that he has, this is a good picture to have in our mind. That man had a lot of responsibility, and he was capable for that responsibility. He wasn't making any excuses and saying, I cannot do this or do that, or God, you are not enough, or I can't do it, or, not until the fall. When he fell, then came the excuses, and there came the fear and the shame and the guilt, and he became a different person. We call this the OSN. What's the OSN? Okay, old sin nature or the flesh. And making excuses and hiding behind his actually it was a false identity. We find him to be very complicated and also very dishonest. Man is not truthful. Let God be true and every man is a liar. In which way do we lie? We lie in our minds, in our thinking regarding ourselves. Let's see. Let's see. We go to... we draw the heart of man in our psychology class, Bible psychology class, with a hole in it. Many of you know this drawing. Man has a hole in his heart. And it's actually, it is Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 10. We have eternity is in his heart. He actually has an eternal hole in his heart. There's nobody that can fill the heart of man but God himself. But man has lost God, and so he lives with a lot of complications. And the problem that he really has is his heart. Okay? So we have the mind of man. We draw it this way: the heart and spirit, the heart and the spirit of man. They are, the heart is deceived, and he doesn't know really how wrong he is. And I think about that quite a bit in my own life. I wonder how wrong I am. It doesn't bother me. It actually maybe helps me when I realize that I'm not, I don't really know very much. I am confident about some things, but there are a lot of things that I don't trust my own judgment on. That's 1 Corinthians chapter 4. The Apostle Paul said similar things like that. I judge not my own self. And then 1 Corinthians 8 and verse 2. The heart and the mind of a man, they go together. And the mind is darkened. Because the heart is deceived, then it affects my mind. And my mind is darkened. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 18. These are just simple teachings on Bible psychology that lay the foundation for me to understand the subject a little better. My mind is darkened because my heart is deceived. Like, I can make reasons, I can formulate ideas, I can do it all because my heart is seeing things in a different way. I can say, for example, God doesn't love me. You say, you mean God doesn't love you? Yeah, God doesn't love me. I'm sure of that. How do you know that? Because that's the way I understand it. So my mind says God doesn't love me. And the reason why the mind is darkened and believing a lie is because there's something wrong with my heart. And that my heart is the old heart. There are two hearts. There is the old man, the old sin nature, and there is the new heart. How did you get a new heart? By being born again. God gave us a new heart and a new spirit. Now, through the new heart, Luke 8, and I appreciate you writing down the verses and just reading them and writing them on your windshield. Wouldn't that be cool? Like if we all pulled into church and we had Bible verses on our windshield and stuff. Hey, what verse you got on your shield today? I think it's possible. I haven't tried it, but I think we could. Okay, Luke 8:15, it says, the seed sown on the good and sincere heart bears fruit. Well, where would a good and sincere heart come from? It can only come from the new birth. There isn't anybody good. You see, our theology has to be consistent. And if there is no one good, there is no one good. Then when the seed is sown on the good soil, which is the good and sincere heart, where did that come from? That came from the new birth. So now because of the new birth, you have good soil, and you're able to receive the word like no one can receive the word like a newborn Christian can. That's why we are in love with our Bible, because we have a new heart. And if we draw the diagram, let's see. With the new picture here, there's the new heart. It doesn't have a hole in it, okay? So this is the heart of David. I give you a heart, the heart of David, right? David's heart was after God. Well, where did that heart come from? The new birth. David was born again. He had a new heart. He had a heart after God. And so do you. You might say, well, maybe you do, or he does, or she does. But because of your new birth, you have a heart after God. And that heart is what affects your mind. Here is your mind, and the heart affects it. It's like it has an effect on the mind. These are different words. Heart and mind are not the same words. Nous and cardia. You have different words for different parts of our psychological makeup. By the way, there's an analogy, I think, which is fair to make. We have a medical doctor here, so he knows this subject, and I think you do also. What material are our kidneys made of, and our liver, and our lungs? What's the material? Are there proteins or fats, lipid? What is that material? Okay, you have amino acids, peptide bonds, you have proteins and so on. But what's the function of kidneys? What's the function of lungs? They're different functions. But the material is similar. It's not the same, but the function is radically different. Kidneys are very different from lungs, and a liver is very different from kidneys. Well, same in the soul of man. My heart is not the same as my mind, and my spirit is not the same as my heart and my mind. They have different function. The spirit of a man is connection with God, and my heart is my heart. And when my heart is wrong, it affects my mind. Now notice here about our mind, there's 5 words we can write down here. The mind thinks. Anybody remember this? You do? It knows. What else does the mind do? Remembers. What else? Understands. And the 5th one, imagines. Because of my new heart, my mind is affected, and I think differently now because I have this new heart that affects me in my thinking. I'm able to process thoughts, even have ideas that come to my mind, and I'm able to think about things because of God and His grace giving me a new heart. It's amazing. I think a carpenter or a computer programmer or a worker or a mother or a father, a doctor, a teacher, I think that God affects our hearts first. I mean, we're born of God, and then He renews the mind. That's Romans 12 and verse 2. And we are able to think, know, like our memory, understanding, and we're able to imagine. Okay, these are real changes. Like, this is amazing when you find your life not dull anymore, but really you have been affected by God, and this on a regular way of life, like your life is affected by God. And one of the evidences of it is the Bible is important to you, becomes alive to you, not always. I think this is important to say. I'm not always excited about my Bible. I can fall asleep reading it. Not always does it seem like God is speaking to me from my Bible, but I know it is there. In a good chapter, I think, did we say it Dr. Chung? Did we say that last week? Job 28? Okay, Job 28, I think I asked you to read it last week. And we were talking about it in the break. And how do we find wisdom? The sea says, it's not in me. And up in the sky, it's not in me, don't look here. And the rubies say, you cannot buy it using me. You cannot find wisdom by buying it with rubies or money. But the fear of God is where it happens. And this comes. These are real effects that happen in our lives. So here we have a biblical base for our counseling. It's a way of thinking that is a fundamentally powerful reference for people's lives. And they don't know it. They don't think their life can change. They don't think they could be delivered from their trouble. They don't think that depression will go away. They may not think God loves them or any number. They're not saved, or they're afraid of their future. They're troubled with their past. And we understand this because we understand people. Okay, then let's go to the last part. And this is, I think, in this book. Yeah. Is this too much material? It's not. You know a lot of this, don't you? How many of you know a lot of what we're talking about? You know a lot of it or no? Is it kind of new a little bit? Takes time? How many of you are lying to me? You're lying to me, every one of you. Okay. Now, all right, so here we go. We went over this one. Now, biblical perspective versus traditional church culture. When I say traditional church, I mean you go out down the street, drive 5 minutes, go to a church. There's Catholic, Presbyterian, whatever. The traditional church culture. On the left, the relationships are casual and formal. When people have problems, we're talking on this side here, people have problems, they are problem-centered therapies. People live with horizontal relationships. Relationships are casual and also formal, but not deep. You can go to a church, they may not know your name, you might ask for counsel. I'm not being critical, I'm wanting to draw the context that there is a great need for biblical counsel. But unfortunately, in the church life with many Christians, they live externally. And they say, I'm dressed well, I went to church Sunday, I drive a good car into the parking lot, I'm a nice guy, everybody says, they say hello to me, we talk about golf, we have a nice day, the weather and everything, and I go away with my problems. And they don't know that I have been sexually abused, or I have an addiction to pornography, or I have a money problem or a marriage problem. Because traditional churches, they are not deep enough, and I don't want to sound proud or is exclusive or elitist, but I want to speak right out there about what we're dealing with in our in our world, and that is there are great needs amongst Christians to get deeper counsel that will address where people are really living, because there's a lot of hypocrisy in all of us, and we'll say, oh, everything's fine, and we project the image, and the relationships are casual and formal, and we don't dare talk about our real problems because maybe we feel there are no real answers. Okay? The other side on this side over here, Our hope is that the relationships would be spiritual, that the pulpit will readjust our thinking, that we will be encouraged in a vertical relationship with God, and that we will actually be transparent in reality with people that we can trust. Next page, list continues. Okay. Left side, the list. Are you with me? There's a hush that came in with the crowd. I'm like, it's making me nervous. Okay. All right. In the traditional church life, people are sensitive to their feelings. In distinction to born-again, spirit-filled, transparent, Bible-believing counseling, we are not to be sensitive to our feelings as much as being sensitive to the truth. Tell me the truth. This is Proverbs 27. And verse 6. Open rebuke is better than secret love. Okay, have I lost you? Okay, we're good, aren't we? Okay, sensitive to feelings. They also, in the pulpit and in their way, they have like activity, they have their services. Their message may be more philosophical, secular, and maybe how-to. There is also sporadic church attendance and formal church attendance, whereas we are interested in body life. Body life means that we have a regular sense of belonging to a family, not in formality, but in just real living. We are the way we are. The way you are in your house is also the way you are in the church, because you have spiritual life, and you're edified, and you are healed deeply. But some people are healed slightly. Turn to Jeremiah 6, please. Verse 14. They have healed also the hurt of the daughter of my people slightly. Anybody know what that means? Heal the hurt of my daughter slightly. Yes, Norm. Okay, not deeply, healing slightly. Can anybody give me an example of being healed slightly? Yeah, Dakota?
It's like putting a Band-Aid over a deep wound.
Okay, putting a Band-Aid over a deep wound. Maybe I have a trauma, and then somebody says it's going to be okay. Even quoting a Bible verse might also do that, even though we do that and believe in it. There can be deep problems that people have, and we want to speak really Psalm 17, verse 2, let my sentence come from your presence. Great verse, Psalm 17, verse 2. Did you hear it last night in the message? Yeah, let my sentence come from your presence. Wow. But the false prophets, kind of like Oprah, is it? Oprah, Dr. Phil, the popular psychologists, TV entertainers that address people's problems, and they talk about them maybe with optimism or encouragement or fun or entertainment. They heal people slightly by saying, like, we accept you as you are, and we care about you, and so on. But if Jesus came onto that TV program, And if Jesus was to talk to us with our problems, how would he heal us? Divinely and deeply and with real heart-searching counsel, and pull us aside and talk to us privately and see in our hearts and say, the problem here on the surface is like this, but let me tell you, I want to instruct you and guide you in something that is incredible, very powerful and eternal. That's how I want to guide you and counsel you. But the false prophets, this is your assignment, and I'm going to finish up, and Pastor Simon's going to say a few words to us. But your assignment is read Jeremiah chapter 6. And, you can start anywhere, just read the whole chapter. Actually, I spent an hour a couple weeks ago, read 5, 6, 7, those 3 chapters. And I enjoyed it because I just saw how much lying and deceit and betrayal was in Israeli culture. And God said, they are like well-fed horses neighing after their neighbor's wife. Like horses become sexually active for different reasons, but one of them is if they're well-fed. And same with human beings. If they're well-fed, they can be sexually active. And they neigh after their neighbor's wife, I think that's a graphic word from in Jeremiah. And he's saying the false prophets are not giving you the real answers. And that's Jonah 2, 8 and 9, another portion in Lamentations 2:14. Lastly, people in a traditional church are aware of the problems, and Bible-believing, born-again, Spirit-filled assemblies are aware of the eternal is. That's another message in itself. They are aware of past and future issues. Past and future. We are aware of the eternal is. God is here, and I didn't know it, is what Jacob said in Genesis 28. But we are in the presence of God with our shoes off, Exodus 3, verse 14. And God said, you're standing on holy ground, take your shoes off. I am God, and that's body life. That's a pulpit ministry that is magnifying Christ and revealing to you the nature of Christ and his finished work. That's amazing. Wow. So this is what we are going to refer to through the semester. Okay, question or comment? Yes, Mary?
Just clarifying the assignment, Jeremiah 6.
Okay, clarify the assignment, thank you. Jeremiah chapter 6, read it, and I want you to notice 14, verse 14, and then memorize verse 16, the solution. 14 is a slight healing, like Dakota said, a Band-Aid on a cancer. Maybe take an aspirin, go home, take a nap, and you will die later. Like just a little bit of help, but no real solution, okay? And compare 14 with verse 16. And this verse 16 is a windshield verse. That'll be fun to do. And listen to it. Stand in the ways and see. Ask for the old paths, where is the good way, and walk therein, and you shall find rest for your souls. But they said, we will not walk therein. Okay, so read the chapter, take note of verse 14, and then memorize verse 16. The last part of your assignment is pray for 1 hour. Yeah, get on your knees or sit in a chair or walk around in a room and keep your mind and your heart focused on Christ and pray for 1 hour. And just enjoy that and have your Bible open, pray for 1 hour. Wow, and ask God to help you in prayer. Do that privately, do it alone. Norm?
Does that include the chapel time on Wednesday morning? Can we use that?
Yeah, you can, that's included. Yes, you can do that. You can add 17 minutes there, and then like a 2-minute prayer at dinner. You can add that 2 minutes. And as long as it adds up to 60, Norm, we're okay. No, I'm joking. He and I are good buddies, so. Prayer breakfast is Saturday morning for the ladies at the Canino's house. That's an advertisement. And so welcome Simon. Is that good, Pastor Simon? Yeah. Okay.
Everybody, 1 Corinthians chapter, 1 Kings 3. Okay, we're going to read verses 16 through 27. 1 Kings 3, 16 through 27. Pardon? 1 Kings 3, 16 through 27. Then there came 2 women that were harlots unto the king, and stood before him. And the one woman said, O my lord, I and this woman dwelt in one house, and I was delivered of a child with her in the house. And it came to pass the 3rd day after that I was delivered, that this woman was delivered also, and we were together. There was no stranger with us in this house, save we 2 in the house. And the woman's child died in the night, because she overlaid in it. She slept on it. And she arose at midnight, and took my son from beside me, while thine handmaid slept, and laid it in her bosom, and laid her dead child in my bosom. And when I rose in the morning to give my child suck, behold, it was dead. But when I had considered it in the morning, behold, it was not my son, which I did bear. And the other woman says, Nay, but the living son is my son, and the dead son is thy son. And this said, No, but the dead is thy son, and the living is my son. Thus they spoke before the king. And the king said, This one saith, This is my son that liveth, and thy son is dead. And the other saith, Nay, but thy son is dead, and my son is living. And the king said, Bring me a sword. And they brought a sword before the king, and the king said, Divide the living child in 2, and give half to the one, and half to the other. Then spake the woman whose the living child was unto the king, for her bowels yearned upon her son, and she said, O my lord, give her the living child, and in no wise slay it. But the other said, Let it be neither mine nor thine, but divided. Then the king answered and said, Give her the living child, and in no way slay it. She is the mother thereof. Great story. Solomon was a wise man, gave incredible counsel. But the question should be asked and can be asked, where did he get such counsel? Where did that counsel come from? Okay, the real question could be asked is, did he find something in the Bible that would tell him what counsel to give in this situation? Obviously, the answer is no. You could search the scriptures, maybe I've missed something, but there's nowhere in the scripture that tells you what to do when two women come to you with two children, one dead and one alive. Yet Solomon gave wise counsel because his mind was different. His thinking was different to the way normal people think. And I want to speak for a few minutes about the way the counselor thinks and his mindset. And the Bible in his life as opposed to the Bible in his counselor's life, in his counseling life. You know, it's very easy to think of biblical counseling. Okay, somebody comes to me for counsel and I just give them the Bible and give them lots of verses, and that's how I do it. But there's something missing. Paul talks about the mind of Christ. Solomon had that mind. And the way that happens with the Bible in our life is not that we're using the Bible to counsel other people directly, which could often end up beating people up, but rather the Bible changes the mind of the counselor. And then the counselor can counsel. It's not that I go to the Bible and I open it up and I find something to give to you in this situation, but the Bible has changed me, and I am now a different person with a different mindset, a different way of thinking. So now when a situation comes up, I have a divine way of looking at it. This does not happen overnight. In the back we have Pastor Gary Grunwald, who is, if you want counsel, he'd be a great person to go to. I'd love to have met him 30 years ago. Just to see a difference, right? Has God made a change in his life? Yeah, he's not nodding his head. Yes, yeah, of course. It takes time sometimes. And you know, many of you are here, first year Bible college students, second and third and fourth year. Sometimes it takes a lot longer for the mind to be renewed and modified so that when people come to you with situations, you have something to give them. It's not just giving a Bible. How many people have ever gone to someone for counsel or been given counsel from someone that just quotes Bible verses and you sense that they're just beating you up? Anybody? Or am I the only person that's ever been given that kind of, yeah, you know, this part of the Bible says this, and it says this over here, and it says that over there, and you just feel like you're being given the law. Okay, what does 2 Corinthians 3:6 say? Let's read it. 2 Corinthians 3. I apologize for using the iPad, but my eyesight is so bad that a regular Bible at this distance would be too close with my glasses on and too far away with my glasses off. Okay. Who also has made us able ministers of the New Testament, not of the letter, but of the Spirit. For the letter killeth, but the Spirit giveth life. So biblical counseling is just bringing out the Bible and clouding people over the head with Bible verses and all the things we know produces death. It's the Spirit in our counseling that produces life. This is kind of a big issue. Truth is another big issue. I mean, Pastor Schaller talked about truth during his portion, and he's right that we have truth as opposed to emotions. But again, what use is truth without love? Ephesians, right? Ephesians 4:15. Giving people truth because we know what the truth is and they don't, but there's no love coming out. That's not the kind of counsel we really want to give people. So there's also other situations where, how can I put this? It seems Like the Bible is addressing the same issue but in different ways. I'll give you an example of a topic which is often abused, and that's the one of marriage. Widows. Should widows get married, remarry or not? What does Paul say? It's a kind of a trick question. Should a widow get married or not? Remarry or not? A widow? Should they remarry or should they not remarry? Well, pardon? Yes, that's right, it's not cut and dry. 1 Corinthians 7:8, Paul says, kind of recommends not remarriage. 1 Timothy 5:14, speaking to young widows, he really says they should remarry. And you could see, well, there seems to be a contradiction. But there's a reason. In 1 Corinthians 7, he's dealing with widows remarrying in situations where there's a lot of sexual immorality. With Timothy, he's talking about financial responsibility and the fact that widows who are young are a burden on the church. Whereas if they get married, their husband can take care of them. That's sorry. Why is that so funny to people? Husbands taking care of their wives? Yeah. But the point is, there's different, if it's not so clear-cut all the time, and you have to kind of go behind it. And as you read the Bible, it's like extrapolation. The Bible makes say one thing over here, another thing over here. These are specific instances in the Bible. But what happens in our mind is the line is drawn between them. Does anybody remember what extrapolation is? And interpolation? Okay. But the point is, okay, you've been given this in the Bible, but because you've got these two, all these other situations in between suddenly become reality. So when this happens, because your thinking's changed, you know what to give people. So I guess I'm trying to say something is when the Bible is as part of your counseling, it's not there to be used as directly as a tool, just to kind of recite stuff to people and to give people checklists. But it's there to change the mind of the counselor, so the counselor has now got something to impart to people. Yeah, Oliver.
So, Pastor Simon, could you speak to us quickly out of Romans 12 in relation to what we're hearing about?
12:2?
12:2 about the
Renewed mind, exactly. I mean, the renewed mind is renewed through the Bible. Because the old mind has an old way of thinking, but the Bible gives the new mind a new way of thinking.
What's the importance of it by renewing it? I'm saying daily. What happens, I guess, what's just the importance of it renewing it daily?
Because there's a tendency for us to always revert to our old ways. Always. We always have to be keeping fresh. When Paul talks about being filled by the Spirit, with the Spirit, he's talking about continual filling. It's like, okay, can you live by not breathing? So you take one deep breath, you pass out, right, and die. But you've got to continually be breathing. It's just because you're continually needing a new impartation, because yesterday's manna is yesterday's manna. So the daily idea is a constant renewal. So the counselor has to have that constant renewal, so he's got something to give to people. His mind has to be stayed on Christ, yeah. Yeah. I hope that kind of makes sense. Does that kind of... Yeah? Okay. Anything else? Okay, so 1 minute over. See you guys next week.